Lot to talk about with our law enforcement analyst here, John Dale Hartman. Great to have you again, sir.
Good to be here, Dave. Thanks. Good to be here.
Yeah, and it's very tragic what happened yesterday in Minnesota, and I immediately thought of you because these are situations that you've trained for, you've dealt with. What's your first thoughts when you heard of the situation in Minnesota? Because there are some things that are different from your I hate to say average school shooting, but this it seemed a little different the way things went about. What's your take on what you observed?
Well, yeah, that's a really great question. I think the starting point is um, there is no panacea here. In trying to figure out how to respond, what's occurred, what can we predict, it isn't one size fits all. It's one size fits one.
Yeah.
And so you've got to look at each individual incident and then say, okay, what do we learn from this and how do we proceed forward? Um, uh, uh, the a unique aspect of it, and I'd have to go back through the literature and see if there were any other incidents that involved this. There have been. I just don't remember how many. But one of the unique aspects of this incident is that the assault did come from the outside in. Now that isn't the first time that's been done, but in this instance, it did. I think and I've done trainings for houses of worship and so forth. I think um, um, what people have a hard time getting their mind around is that when you're in church, you feel you're safe.
Yep.
And I mean, there's just this presumption that you are. And what we've seen is that's not the case. And so I think from a looking at it just from the outside in, and I don't have needless to say, I don't have all the facts on the investigation thus far. The fact that it was from outside in, that's different. It's not the only one, but it does present a different challenge for sure.
Yeah, I remember, I forget where it was overseas. There was a concert where something was done. That was different. They were shooting in order to get everyone to come out at one time. That was different, I guess. So,
Yeah, I think it was in England. I mean, it was in northern England. I think.
yeah, that was different. People been asking me, parents, ever since. I've had several parents say, well, what about retired military or retired police to go to schools and maybe it becomes a nationwide program? And obviously you would have to vet these people, retired police, retired military, to have one of them at a school all day long. And you're telling me this actually does happen in districts.
Yeah, in Pennsylvania, it's been around for a while. I can't even remember when it started. It's how long it's been here. It's been a common track for officers when they're retiring from their municipal positions. They take a job with a school district as a school resource officer (SRO), and there are many, many, many police officers out there right now providing security for the schools. And as police officers, they bring a different level of security, needless to say, because of the training, their experience, all of that. And many of them have had specific training even before they were SROs, had specific training in school assaults and so forth. So, yeah, we have them here in Pennsylvania.
Is it also a deterrent? For example, some of these school shootings, the perpetrator would scope out the school. If I'm one of those people, God, never, but if I see a law enforcement at that school, that's also a deterrent. You would think if I
Absolutely.
yeah, if I know that there is an armed person at that school, I'm more likely not to mess with that school. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, 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 you're not wrong at all. And I think that's just not in the schools. That's in any situation. I mean, when you have police or security, if you know they're in place and active, visible, then it does bring a level of consideration from the assaulter standpoint. Do I want to do that? If it's a location where there are no police or that the police are going to respond, from the outside in, um, yeah, that is taken into consideration. And from my perspective as a former chief of police, that was very important to have that kind of response capability in there because and we've talked about this before. We're coming. I mean, we get the 911 call. I can guarantee you we're coming and we're going to come with all of our capabilities. But in that period from the time that we get the 911 call until the time we arrive, what's happening there? And the placement of those SROs, school resource officers, in the locations um, uh, definitely enhances the overall safety of everybody in that school. Absolutely.
Um, and I know you're the law enforcement expert and maybe law enforcement policy as well.
Right.
But I bring this up as a nation.
Right.
Could we dedicate funding to like a nationwide or a statewide program to like make it more official where retired military law enforcement that is a thing, you are at schools, and make more funding going into that, because it can happen anywhere, and I know it is very rare. It's not as the media might make it out to be. It is rare. But could that be maybe part of, I know throwing money at things always doesn't help, but could there be more funding into something like that?
Well, from a security professional, I don't look at it as throwing money at something. I look at it as, okay, providing another layer. You have to understand that security in place is a concentric levels. And can you stop it completely? No. You can't. What you can do is make it extremely difficult for someone to be able to do what happened yesterday. And part of that is, I mean, if your question is, do I think as a former chief of police, and I'm in the private sector now, do I think it's worth the investment? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Here's the question. Here's where it gets mucked up, where people will get confused. Do we like the fact that we have to do that? Because I started in my tactical training. I started back in the 90s, and I can remember where schools were real resistant of having a police officer in the school with their sign on. They felt that schools were separate and distinct, and they didn't need us in there in that capacity. We would respond. Well, the problem was, and I was taking the training before Columbine. The problem is that when we don't have that intimate knowledge of the building per se, if someone says, oh, yeah, it's in the wood shop, the shooter's in the wood shop, if I'm not allowed in the school, I don't know where the wood shop is. Yeah. And so it started along those lines. It also instituted where we're going to put numbers above the doors of the schools, so that when the first responders do arrive, we know where the shooter's at or where they're at or what have you. Those were minor tweaks, if you will, but they meant so much for an effective response. Yeah. So I think that having that officer in there, because they're officers, these are law enforcement officers, having an officer in there is critical. I think in addressing the problem, I think it's critical.
And I think now most parents that I've talked to, many would agree, they would feel comfortable with that. So a national program or something, because that could even employ either veterans or former police. Sure. I think because the threat's always going to be there. The people talk about eliminating the guns. I could go get a gun at any time, even illegally, if I wanted to. Right. You're never going to eliminate the weapons. And in this case, we're finding out now, once again, mental health. This person was extremely mentally, there was something wrong there. Right. And there might have been signs, we don't know, but it seems like it's always the case where it's like, oh, damn, if someone would have saw something, because the person was like crying out literally that they were going to do something.
Well, yeah. And I think the issue is this is a communal effort that includes mental health professionals, it includes medical professionals, includes counselors, includes the police, fire, EMS, the teachers, the school district, the community, and the students.
Okay.
Everybody, this is not just a law enforcement issue. Again, and we've talked about this before, we don't invent anything in law enforcement. We beg, borrow, and steal procedures and so forth. That's how our art was formed. It's part and parcel of a lot of other things. So I think that what you need is, it's what's the culture in place. And I think if the culture in place is understands that unfortunately where we're at right now is we need that kind of response capability. Then I think it makes it a lot easier to make those critical decisions on how do we move forward on addressing this issue.
One last question, or maybe two more. But some people say, gun control, eliminating the guns. But in law enforcement, you've probably seen many situations where people shouldn't have guns, but they manage to get
Right.
them.
Sure. Drugs are illegal. Do we have drugs? Just simply making something illegal doesn't mean it doesn't exist. What if somebody that shouldn't have a gun wants a gun, there are many channels that they can go through to get that weapon. And the issue is okay. So what happens with when the innocent people? What happens with you as a homeowner, you in the school, whatever? That's we've heard that argument for years and years and years and years. The fact of the matter is, the person that's going to do that or do these things in many, many, many instances are going to acquire that gun legally, illegally. They're going to do whatever they have to do to get that weapon.
Yeah, I remember when I was working in Pittsburgh. I think it was Franklin Regional. There was a mass stabbing. I just remember working one morning, and that individual kid, I think he stabbed like 18 people. So that kid was going to do no matter what he wanted. So it sounds like there are possible solutions. What is are some people I'm listening in the national media is like we're at a lost cause. What is this? It sounds like a combination of maybe hardening the security, mental health, and the community as a whole. To if you see someone like this, don't just brush it off as being, oh, he's just crazy. He won't do that. It's step up and say something.
Well, there was something that was telling because I naturally was watching the national news as well, and there was a little boy that got on. I think he was 10 years old, and he was talking about the response. His friend got on his back and actually was shot. And he talked about the training. And so we know there was training in there. So that's part and parcel of this whole mosaic and how we address this issue is part of it is the training and what kind of training you would provide to them. Now, that's a slippery slope because it's got to be age specific. And what are we really going to want to expose them to? There's things coming out in the literature that you got to be careful on how you provide that training to the younger kids.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, there's training involved. What are the schools, the administrators? What's their position on it? We all have to work together. It's like I often use the analogy of spaghetti. You're asking me about this one strand and how am I going to address it? It's all tied into a bunch of other things. And if we're all working together towards a common goal, I think it can work. Security, safety starts with you. Period. I'm coming. You put in 911, but it's going to start with you. So what we want to do is make you, and I use that you personally and you from a standpoint of representing an institution, make you as capable as we possibly can of responding to that incident before we get there, because there is that time lag. And you saw how quick this went down, how much damage that person was able to do in such a short period of time. So you have to think in terms of how do we respond immediately? It's like woulda, shoulda, coulda. One thing I noticed with all my education, all my training, that whole crystal ball thing, I never got right. And I know, as a dealer and working with you in the past, I know we had talked about that many times. I wish we could look 1 second into the future, but so you build these levels of security to try to respond. And, are they fail safe? Nothing. Unfortunately, in life, nothing's fail safe. And I think as adults, we understand that. We wish that wasn't the case. And we think in terms of how could this be happening in our schools? This isn't a new phenomenon, and it has been. I mean, it's something that we've got to address one way or another. And I think in your lead off question was about school resource officers. Totally support it. Totally support having them in there. As a former chief of police, I'm telling you, it's like I think it's critical that they be in these buildings and on these campuses to provide that first level response.
Yeah.
Respond.
And whether it be a state created a separate fund just for that or something, I just got back from New Orleans, and it was in a not a great area of town, but there was a Walgreens, and I went in there, and they had a private armed guard.
Right.
I felt better as soon as I walked in, and I saw that person standing there, an armed guard. It made me feel more comfortable being there.
And you would, yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course. And I'm glad that you said that because I think that we've got to be conscious of that. The issue is the funding. I think, those are questions that are above my pay grade and your pay grade, but I can tell you from at least my perspective. I think we need to. I think there's value in that, and I think that we've got to find a way to get that done.
Yeah.
I know there's so many other things, but we've got to shore up our schools. I mean, these are our kids. These are our future. These are our babies. And the bottom line is we've got to be able to protect them to the best we can. And I think that naturally there's going to be a cost there, but I think we have to address that. Now, where that funding comes from and how, like I said, that's way above my pay grade. Yeah. But the bottom line is, I think that there's plenty of people in government right now that would be able to carve out a plan on how we may make that or allow that to happen.
Yeah, exactly. And some of the government waste, you can put it there. But I wanted to have you on and respond. And if there is a company or a school or someone out there, they can call you up. Your website again, John. What is your website? John Dale Hartman.
John Dale Hartman Investigations.com.
Okay, I'll put the link in the chat and in the article that I do.
Right.
And you can consult and just help companies or businesses come up with a plan. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, sir. And hopefully not a good situation, but I'll bring you on again soon. I want to talk soon about shortage of law enforcement because that's something I'm hearing about as well. So I'll have you on soon to talk about that.